Hello and welcome to British English with me, Alexandre. Welcome to another video about English grammar. Today we're gonna be talking about another unit. We're talking about Unit 11. This is about the future continuous and future perfect continuous. Basically, we're talking about three tenses in English: future continuous, future perfect, and its corresponding continuous form. We're again we're based on that grammar: advanced grammar in use, a self-study reference and practice book for advanced learners of English. This is from Cambridge University by Martin Hewings. This is actually my favorite book, the one I love the most. My hobby also. Okay, we're gonna be talking about another grammar unit which is quite useful for English learners or English speakers, English readers, English listeners, etc. Okay, before we get started, please, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this channel, share the content, the lessons with English students, English learners all over the world. And please, it's very important to understand that grammar is fundamental so that you can understand an English text, an English news article, whatever. Okay, without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, this is section A. We're talking now initially about the future continuous. For example, I will be doing something tomorrow. I will. We use these auxiliary will before the main verb. I will be doing in the ing form. Okay, we can use the future continuous to talk about 1. Something that's predicted to start before a particular point of future time and that may continue after this point, often the result of a previous decision or arrangement. For example, when it goes into orbit, the spacecraft will be carrying 30 kilos of plutonium. So we've got the situation at the time sentence: when it goes into orbit, the spacecraft will be carrying 30 kilos of plutonium. This is the future continuous. Another example: Anna will be helping us to organize the party. Anna will be helping us to organize the party. I'm referring to a future time and a continuous action as well. We can also use the future continuous to talk about another situation. For example, 2. A future activity, that's something that we do. A future activity that is part of the normal course of events, or that is one of a repeated or regular series of events. For example, Dr. Lin will be giving the same talk in room 103 at 10 next Thursday. So this is one of a repeated or regular series of events. Another example: will you be driving to work as usual? Will you be driving to work as usual? Okay, let's continue. We can often use either the future continuous or the present continuous when we talk about arranged activities or events in the future. Compare. Okay, before we get on with that, do you know what's the difference between activity and event? Activity is something that we human beings do or make, and events are things that happen but doesn't necessarily have a relation to the things we do. So again, we can often use either the future continuous or the present continuous when we talk about arranged activities or events in the future. For example, we will be leaving for Istanbul at 7 in the evening. This is an activity we will be doing. This is timetabled, or we might also say in the present continuous, we are leaving for Istanbul at 7 in the evening. So we might use the future continuous or the present continuous, referring to that future event of leaving for Istanbul at 7 in the evening. Okay, let's continue. When the race starts, another example, when the race starts later this afternoon, the drivers will be hoping for drier weather than last year. So in that case, it's not up to them to control that situation. So we don't say not hoping that in the present continuous. We've got to use will because it doesn't depend on the driver's actions. Again, when the race starts later this afternoon, the drivers will be hoping for drier weather than last year. Not when the race starts later this afternoon, the drivers are hoping, because it doesn't depend on them for that situation, for that event. Not hoping, not reporting, because actually it's not reporting the details of a program or timetable. It depends on the weather. It's not up to them, up to the drivers. So in that case we use the future continuous and not the present continuous. Okay, let's move on. Let's go now through section B. When we don't want to indicate willingness, intention, invitation, etc., we prefer to use the future continuous instead of will. For example, if your guests have stayed longer than you wanted and you don't know when they're leaving, you might ask, "Will you be staying with us again tonight?" Asking about their plans. Will you be staying with us again tonight? You want to know their intention, their willingness, rather than will you stay with us again tonight. They might think this is an invitation. You're making an invitation for them to stay one more night. Okay, that's basically the difference. So when it depends on them, we use will be staying future continuous. Will you be staying with us again tonight? Asking about their plans. Rather than will you stay with us again tonight? Because it's a sort of invitation for them to stay one more night. So that's the importance of understanding how to use the tenses in English. Okay, let's go now through section C. We're talking about the future perfect and future perfect continuous. Future perfect, I will have done and I will have been doing. Future perfect continuous. Okay, we use the future perfect to say that something will be ended, completed, or achieved by a particular point in the future. For example, by the time you get home, I will have cleaned the house from top to bottom. Again, by the time you get home, I will have cleaned the house from top to bottom. I will have cleaned the house from top to bottom by the time you get home. This is the future perfect. Now, another example with the future perfect continuous. I'm sure his awful behavior will soon have been forgotten. It's in the passive form. His awful behavior will soon have been forgotten. I'm sure about that. Okay. Let's continue. Moving on. We use the future perfect continuous to emphasize the duration of an activity in progress at a particular point in the future. For example, Next year, I will have been working in the company for 30 years. This is the future perfect continuous. We're emphasizing the duration of an activity in progress at a particular point in the future. Now, with both the future perfect and future perfect continuous, we usually mention the future time, e.g., that means, for example, by the time you get home next year, I will have been working in the company for 30 years. Okay, moving on, let's go through section D. The future continuous, future perfect, and future perfect continuous can also be used to say that we believe or imagine something is happening around now. For example, we could ask to borrow Joe's car. He won't be using it today. He went to work by bike. Or another example, most people will have forgotten the fire by now. Most people will have forgotten the fire by now. This is the future perfect. The future perfect. Tennis fans will have been queuing at Wimbledon all day to buy tickets. Future perfect continuous. We can use the future perfect continuous to say what we think was happening at a point in the past. For example, motorist Vicky Hesketh will have been asking herself whether speed cameras are a good idea after she was fined £100 last week for driving at 33 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. It's not a long, but it's a really effective lesson explaining how to use those tenses in English, expressing their relations between them, in between them. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Please, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel, share the content. Believe me, I spend hours and hours studying that book. I've actually spent dozens and dozens of hours on this, studying those lessons to try to explain them to you, to try to make them easier for you to understand. And they're really important so you can understand, you can situate yourself for things in time and understand English more accurately and speak English powerfully. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe, share, enjoy the content, give it a thumbs like, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.